Hi, my name's Winnie. I'm a violinist, violist, and gestural performance artist. And today I'd like to share with you some thoughts I've had on contrapuntal contortions, composing for my sounding body. Some view their body as their temple, something one treats with respect, adorns or decorates with beauty, and celebrates what it represents in this mortal realm, that of life. It is what gives us freedom for agency on this planet. But for others, it feels like a prison, a life sentence with this material matter, an imprisonment with this object that doesn't fully represent who we are, our potential, and in fact, we are judged so heavily on it that it hinders our possibilities. It is a limitation from which we can never escape. On most days, we float somewhere in between these two perspectives. My body is all these things, an open, curious matter, seeking ways to taste, hear, see, smell, and touch unexplored territory. It is also the shell that I wish to escape, one that can bore me with its repetitive necessary demands and calls for attention. This achy, creaky, bulging, languid, selfish mass. But it is also the only beautiful body I have. I'm grateful I can call it my own. With it, I get to experience every experience, and it will be what remains with me the longest time. With it, I communicate, connect, and participate in my community. With it, I hear and I am heard. I see and I am seen. I give and I receive. I participate in this exchange through this living body. For the work I have been recently immersed in, the body is the principal medium. It is both the means and the end, participant in the process and in the performance. In these pieces, it is made clear that sound, movement, and drama have been inextricably linked since the beginning of time. To create sound, we need movement, and in moving, nearly always we create some form of noise. It's only natural, the fascination we have in watching a spectacle of sound and movement, to want it to be visually pleasing, dramatic, enticing, or intriguing, and this is augmented if we ourselves are participants in this sound movement's acts. I've been so fortunate to be allowed to take alternative paths, from the privilege of having a body that is non-disabled, to being permitted to a comprehensive education in classical music instrumental practice and performance, to collaborating with others using my body as my instrument, and finally to be creating my own works for my own body and the body of others. To have been given these chances and to be allowed to collaborate, to mutually give and receive so much support, and to have been championed and to champion others. It is in these exchanges that I have experienced communication, connection, and most importantly, the sharing of empathy, of sincerity, and of love. That is what drives me. And though I know I will never feel satiated, I feel so fulfilled because of it. So today I'd like to share with you my little story of how my body afforded me a chance to transform. This site of trouble that allowed me in some ways to transcend to a new territory. How in better understanding my embodied practices, but even more importantly, seeing and listening others' embodied experiences, I am transforming. There's a constant interplay between known experience and experimental inquiry, whether collaborating with other artists or creating alone. And although I'm still not certain of my claim for the title of composer, I try to celebrate my own versions of my own current truths in each contrapuntal contortion I make. As a classically trained violin player, I had viewed my musical instrument as my tool, one which I've spent the most time studying. It is what I originally thought was my most well-practiced means of artistic expression. My early approach to that ideal of classical performance meant that my body was also an instrument, there to service the violin, which in turn produces the music. I identified as a translator to the score and or of the composer's intentions, and felt subject to the requirements necessary in performing the Western classical and modern canon. A sort of slave trapped inside the mechanics of this body, which had to coordinate every single articulation so to produce the perfect balance of contact, speed, and weight in order to yield the ideal sonic phrase, delivered in a way which had to display charm, spontaneity, and fantasy. For a long time, this sounding body, the one that is there to serve the violin, and therefore the whole history that comes with it, was a heavy burden, a paralyzing responsibility that I consciously or subconsciously needed to find a way out of. However, I was so fortunate to have been surrounded by the right group of people at the right time. A group of like-minded misfits who wanted to make weird projects in Paris. We formed our ensemble, Soundinitiative, and over the years, I instinctively made myself most available to all the physically dominant performances, which required less and less violin and more of what I was born with, this sounding performative body. Certain side projects developed, and because of that too, professional and personal ones, I submerged wholeheartedly into yoga and long distance running, into high intensity interval training, and into absorbing interdisciplinary artistic content from dance, theatre, and the performing arts world. And then again, the right project came about at the right time. A project which was a combination of what I was interested in: endurance, virtuosity, physicality, performability, and a link between sound, movement, and emotivity. Inori, by Caroline Stockhausen, for dance and mime and soloists, and full orchestra, is one of the most extreme places of physical performance, with exceptionally detailed musical and gestural notation and annotation. For the soloist, it requires a silent performance of rhythmic, melodic, harmonic, and polyphonic prayer gestures, drawn from a variety of religious practices on a high podium above the orchestra, all detailed by means of clear musical notation and textual annotation. For over 75 minutes, the soloist or soloists must perform a memorized movement work above an 89-piece orchestra through their vertical, horizontal, and sagittal planes of the body. Ideally, the piece is performed so that the soloists or co-soloists and the orchestra the sounds are so synchronized that each gesture gives the impression of being one with the sound. The inter, cross, and transdisciplinary practices required in learning and performing Caroline Stockhausen's Inori changed my personal understanding of physical experience in performance, with what seemed like restrictive notation demanding specific gestures at every instance was in fact a provocation to find my freedom within these boundaries. This challenge, which I fully accepted, allowed me to celebrate this body as never before. I entirely embraced what I seemed capable of doing while acknowledging the limitations that were obvious to me at the time. With this level of external and internal validation, I became a more confident artist, performer, and even a strong violinist. I became a transformed performative body, one who realizes that what once was perceived as a weakness is in fact a superpower. My role is as a dancer mime in the Inori piece here at Lucerne Festival.
Our movements are notated in the score. It's a separate part.
One left hand is the trumpet and right hand is the violin. Our head is another instrument. And so we take on different roles of the different melodies and rhythms.
This is all from memory. And so you have to just spend most of the time at the beginning, at least, getting it in your head. And then the second hardest part for me was just to let go of all that and not think.
To both present something that is precise but emotional, I think, is very difficult.
Hopefully it can touch and relate to the audience.
With this desire to further explore the freedom within my body, I was looking to find different ways to investigate, not just with existing works, but rather experiment with what could be or would be new pieces, tailored to my body with all the experiences it has lived. Whether by luck, chance, or sheer determination to make it happen, in 2019, Australian composer Charlie Strowledge and myself created Tend, a performative piece that resulted from our collaborative project into research and hypotheses about human behaviour. It is the central work in a series of 3, 1-to-1, Tend, and Enfold, each of which places one performer and one audience member, an audient, inside a dimly lit room. These intimate works explore non-verbal gestural communication and changes of atmosphere through non-spoken interactions. They require the performer, generally an instrumentalist, to place their body, tailor their physical language, and to tune their visual communication to the same level of expression as the music in which they are usually trained. For me, the process of creating this work with Charlie is what really defined it as a deeply personal and meaningful collaboration. The experience we had while conceiving it was almost a larger version of what it would become. Through a long series of dialogues and conversations, through sharing of personal anecdotal observation and confusions, and through discussions about communal and personal concepts and values, a strong sense of empathy emerged between us. The way Tend was made directly mirrored the experience we wanted to provide to our future audience. Charlie and I realized we both wanted to investigate how we could play with this concept. We discussed various ideas about what a gesture could mean, explicitly, or implicitly, or what affects specific gestures, a smile, an openness of a wave, or a closed-off attitude from folded arms, what that could have on people. In working with him, I developed a clearer appreciation of the expressive range and physical dimensions of the gestures he sought. In the process of creating Tend, my previous personal experiences as a salesperson, school teacher, telemarketer, coffee shop barista, they all helped me understand how to read social cues coming from the audience member and how to wordlessly make them feel more comfortable in a shared space. These past social and working experiences have shaped my understanding of communication. When to demand attention, when to allow space for others to express themselves, how and when to ease or to provoke a situation, and how to make a transaction during a shared moment. As in Inori, it can be difficult to form body movements associated with certain aspects of social life into a convincing artistic work. Through Tend, again, I found that the most important aspect of each gesture is its emotive intent. The key is to convey that intent efficiently and convincingly while maintaining overall continuity. The development of this skill required experimentation, trying many versions of each gesture, while also accepting that each gesture was already imbued with emotive intent and would be understood differently by different people of different environments or social situations. Charlie and I clarified our curiosity about the human ability to influence, manipulate, and change atmosphere in dialogue with other individuals, but without speaking. For Tend, Charlie defined the role of the performer as someone who creates a sense of quietude, heightens the audience's engagement, and creates a positive involvement with the performance, and ultimately to forge a rapport, while all monitoring the audience's nonverbal behaviors so as to directly participate in this communicative exchange. It required an ability to read and establish a behavioral baseline as soon as possible, and an ability to adjust the temperature in the room. This is the phrase Charlie and I used while developing the piece, so to describe the level of intensity and atmosphere in the shared space between the audience and myself. Although I have my own experiences and instincts, Charlie provided input from different research fields that better clarified or codified methods of observation and reciprocation. What we were wanting to create was empathetic interaction through non-verbal communications. This deeply personal collaboration with Charlie on Tend highlighted how the individual and shared human experience and the communicative body is also the most sensitive of performance materials. While having the opportunities to learn about my sounding and performing body through others' new and existing compositions, the desire to make original work for my own body was also ignited. Whether it's a version of imposter syndrome or a paralyzing fear not knowing where to start, my parallel collaborations with composer-performer Jessie Marino gifted me the the opportunity to first use another person's sounding body as a medium for compositional creations. Recently, Jesse Marino and I have started a duo project called Lookout, in which we aim to create a collection of original works that draw from narratives derived from the duo's personal backgrounds, cultures, and musical skill sets. To curate a performance project of self-created music, mixed media, and specialized musical choreography with the physical body, contrapuntal contortions of sorts. Using interdisciplinary skills, pushing different boundaries for each member of the duo, trying various types of notation and exploring changing roles and expectations, and examining performance dynamics, we both wanted to use our creativity as a means to expand ourselves, both personally and in our practice. In doing so, my personal goal, which had never been fully realized because of my anxieties about legitimacy and my fears about creating an art object of sorts, was to compose. Through Jesse Marino's encouragement and our ongoing dialogue about the potentials of the duo, I was able to overcome these obstacles and escape my comfort zone in creating Tentacles, a duo piece performed by the both of us. My collaboration with Jessie deeply nourished my creativity. We discussed at length our desire to work with the body as an emotive tool by using our musical training and knowledge, but with these applied to and based upon concepts taken from simple, everyday human gestures. We wanted to conduct exploratory experiments, methodologically flexible, changing, and investigative, aiming for a result that would take the form of a concert-length program of works. In our paradigm, there is no rush to produce works. Rather, we're motivated by the desire to steadily learn about each other's tastes, skill sets, and goals. We've applied this approach both artistically and personally, which has led to an in-depth dialogue on a multitude of topics, ranging from intensely theoretical issues to the most mundane of banalities. Ours is a genuinely enriching endeavour. We're working towards crafting an identity as a collaborative duo, showing each other's new things, learning new skills, and appreciating the subtleties of different viewpoints. The creative process is a lifelong process. It is complex and it is not linear. It requires that both of us maintain a strong sense of identity as individuals and as a duo, and this entails accepting a form of risk, moving beyond our zones of comfort to discover and explore unfamiliar territories. By investigating and the process that we've undertaken, we're able to better recognize the convergence of ideas that for every artist underlies in the creative act. We hope every realm we navigate in the future will invite a suitably different method, merging different conjoining influences from past experiences with possibilities to discovered through innovative experiments. Working with such dynamic, supportive, and generous colleagues, peers, and people I consider close friends continuously encourages me to experiment with my boundaries, convincing me that it is from this open, creative process derived from my experience as a performer and creative artist that I gain artistic agency in this world. It instilled me with a strange, just do it attitude that led me to consider making works for my sounding body, and any other sounding body for that matter. This journey has moved from one of strange traumas and troubles to one of transformative hope, to take the risk and use whatever potential there is to make things actual. And so, my journey for composing for the body has started. And though I'm not sure I'll ever get to a level of transcendence, in terms of how I use my body creatively, I am seriously enjoying the adventure, the process, the experimentation, and the experiences this detour path is taking me on. It is what I'm currently interested in, to incorporate different parts of me for artistic expression. Whether this is the frustrated actor or dancer or ridiculously bad pop star in me, or perhaps just sheer curiosity, or jealousy perhaps, in these other forms of craft. Whatever the reasons, I'm enjoying a version of trying them out, looking at them through my Winnie tinted musical glasses. I'm highly motivated to keep investigating through odd experimentation. My compositional process has been based on what I've learned as a performer of other people's works. I've come to understand the performance experience as a process whereby we forge an adaptable dialogue between audience members and performers, a communal conversation of sorts. But to make the piece that allows for that would be a different act, I presumed, to accommodate and expand different perceptions and experiences of body, mind concepts like risk, trust, necessity, instinct, self-protection, speed, fragility, softness, weakness, tension, relaxation, and so on. My aim is to challenge various limitations of what I thought my body or other performing bodies could do and how it is experienced by a public. My process heavily leans on an embodied practice, the discipline, techniques, and skill sets I've gained throughout my life so far, and how to use various tools of transmission of my ideas, for my ideas. Through adapting skills from other crafts and by studying and applying daily life experiences, I develop a deeper vocabulary and lexicon during the process of transmission and gain a greater specificity in matters of physical energies and movements. Acquiring the ability to deliver these precise gestures in a way that expresses and reflects different moments in the piece requires an understanding of variation in style, flow, energy, and presence. I feel comfortable aligning my process to philosopher Richard Schusterman's research on some aesthetics, whereby I integrate my own studied theoretical, empirical, and practical understandings of the body to help with how I think, how I live, and how I make and perform my work. Because I am a human, and I have a body. My experience is embodied. How I live my life is in this body, and what I learn from my body, what experiences I choose or not choose to have, and what I feel is present or absent, it is all knowledge for my life and for my craft. I constantly think about the most fundamental fascinations of the human experience, from our voice and sounds to our gestures and movements, to our ability to connect through reaching out with our senses. Telling stories, touching, dancing, smelling, kissing, smiling, fighting, hugging, etc. I ruminate on how I could communicate that from my bones, my muscle, my skin, my clothes, my posture. I question how I can create phrases or structure with this body I have through my musical lens, and what tools I can gain to get me there. This means taking a certain responsibility in how I choose to critically reflect on what I do and how to continuously educate myself with various means of learning. This has resulted in taking Laban movement analysis classes, workshops with professional contemporary dance companies, yoga teaching training, theatre academies, composition lessons, etc. But always done with the understanding that I will never be what one might call a specialist in that field. But through giving it a go, trying it out, treating their language as one that is fully worth investigating, I opened my world, and I'm so much better for it. I feel like it's almost as if I get to see colours I might have never seen before, or taste a new flavour of an ingredient I thought I knew already. The world becomes more nuanced and layered, and for that I'm so grateful. Interdisciplinary knowledge is so contagious, and it contaminates my creative mind. This embodied artistic research has enabled me to expand my compositional performative knowledge in the most fundamental way. My process exemplifies an all-embracing agency and freedom precisely because of the boundaries and limitations that has been imposed by this body. An epicantic fold, or epicanthus, is a skin fold of the upper eyelid that covers the inner corner of the eye. There are many variations which occur in this feature, including the possession of partial epicantic folds or slight epicantic folds, as well as no fold, curved fold, or the rare reverse fold. This can cause different types of creases, ranging from no crease, faint crease, defined crease, or even multiple creases. The amount of fat beneath the eyelid can also result in puffy lids, fat lids, sunken lids, or the hooded lid. Various other factors influence whether epicantic folds form, including ancestry, age, and certain medical conditions. Though most of what I do comes from deliberate work, careful training, and a conscious effort towards creating the new, I also recognize the power and necessity of dipping into the conscious or unconscious reservoirs of Winnie's wacky wonderland. I've noticed that I often fall into my comfort zone of problem solving, when my acts of making are in fact reactions to filling space and time, outcome-based and lacking room to fester or ferment. What I hope to learn is to rely more on action and not reaction, and to trust time and myself. Not to speed to the deadline, but to trust that competent, creative, and playful inquiries are reliable and they're successful methods in finding each of my contextual truths in each endeavour. And behind each contextual truth of a work are also the contextual truths of the maker. We are always more than just a creator, instrumentalist, or artist. We're made up of embodied and personal knowledge of our cultures, our societies, our intentions, and our interactions. Forever a work in progress, we use our stories, past, present, or dreamed future ones, to tell new stories. Researcher Kathleen Kirsten calls this our web of artistic practice, woven repeatedly by the artist over multiple periods of education, exploration, and performance, offering a solid but agile support and augmenting artistic expertise. I find I am constantly inspired by the webs of others. Their varied and diverse experiences allow for such mottled and complex stories. As much as I like making my own, I crave these diverse and new stories of others. Old stories, new stories, long stories, short stories, men's stories, women's stories, In fact, for me personally, especially women's stories, as women's stories are people's stories. One sex cannot speak for everyone, and I'm very fortunate because as an artist, I'm granted the position to provoke, to try different things, and I'm allowed, almost expected, to be outlandish, to tell diverse stories that are not the same as the one I told before, or to be inconsistent with perhaps what I share. Sometimes, when there's a story in the air so powerful, an enveloping theme, when it is in the collective consciousness, even if we don't experience it individually or personally, it still permeates me constantly. Not because I look for it as a gimmick or a creative device, but rather it affects me as a human being. I see it in others too. Their diverse voices, and I mean all forms of diversity, racial, gender, sexual, generational differences, diverse people encouraging diverse stories, asking critical and informed questions on all elements of the human experience. It is through this way that we can find common ground, experience empathy, and truly connect. I've been so lucky to have had shared spaces, to have been listened to have been seen, and to have been promoted. I've also shared, listened to, saw, and promoted others, and I deeply experienced how in giving we receive, and I celebrate each day when diversity and equality means innovation and creativity. Because I am a work in progress composing performer, there is no fundamental purity of form in my work. But, as a human, I enjoy participating in these sound, movement, aesthetic acts, my contrapuntal contortions. I value them as demonstrations, as reenactments, reproductions, imitations, abstractions, representations, narratives, aids, escapes, on and on and on. I search through investigating elements of human interest. Through practical and theoretical inquiry, experiments and experience, I find or develop meaning in what I make, and that becomes the truth I currently choose. This might change over time. My truth is malleable. The best option, the best argument, is my best truth, my best current truth. My truths are contextual, not universal. They depend on time, space, moment, understanding, desire, current knowledge, and most importantly, on my mind and body present with the audience I have. It is my ultimate limitation, and it is the different freedoms or truth within these limitations that I continually seek. I identify with this sonic body, a performative, truth-searching storyteller, one who continually adapts and modifies behavior for each work performed, through the figure of the composing performer. Both the process and the performance are experiences. The experiences and experiments offer new opportunities, inputs, and challenges. For me, it is so important to fail, maybe even publicly, probably definitely publicly, to take missteps and to grow. I believe I believe an insatiable curiosity is self-satisfying for the performer, but so is an unrelenting effort to participate in society through the ongoing dialogue, education, transmission, and exchange of values and ideas. This enriches the wider community by learning from others, by listening and watching diverse creative bodies sharing strange, troubled, complicated stories. We can offer new opportunities, new dialogues, and new conversations. I'm hopeful that through sensitive, communicative means of expressing with our bodies, we are creeping closer to finding a harmony of sorts, to developing a deeper empathy and hopefully a version of transcendence. Thank you.